one, and we are live with the podcast. Hello, world. My name is Michael, and this is Data Mining Mike Adventure Diver Podcast. And today we are going to adventure dive into the world of cancer survivors and people that leave their comfort zones, go to different lands, and explore the world. And one of those people is Peter Mills, a selfless and a teacher dedicated to educating America's youth. And here he is to tell his story. Peter Mills, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for introducing.
Yeah, man. Just tell me about your favorite Filipino dish you've eaten.
Oh, gosh. So, probably it's called adobo, which is pork and garlic and onions and soy sauce and oyster sauce and anchovy sauce, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And tell me about your dog Monty.
Monty, he was born last May, and so he's not even a year old, but he's fully grown. He's a Cocker Spaniel, blonde, and he can be very annoying, but we love him. We keep him around.
Have you researched the history of the Cocker Spaniel?
Not so much. They were bred to be hunters, of small rodents, but that's about all that I know about them.
Yeah. What turns you on to wanting the Cocker Spaniel versus other dog breeds?
So I grew up with a Cocker Spaniel. When my dad was a kid, he had a Cocker Spaniel. And so we just liked the breed. My last dog was a Dachshund, which was a great dog. But I just decided after having him that let's try a Cocker.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. I was thinking about my dog, Augie Dean. Well, rest in peace. He was a purebred. He was a purebred boxer, but he had his own issues. He would run away all the time. But yeah, tell me about your recent trip to the Philippines. What did that start off with? What was your mindset going into? I'm going to meet someone I've never met before, go across the world, and just go from there.
So it started, number one, I never thought I would go somewhere as far as the Philippines. I've gone to a lot of places. I've traveled around Europe and everything, but the Philippines is really kind of a chance encounter that, I just felt that I should do it. It started off, I had a surgery to do in Los Angeles, and the surgery was due to a problem that came up when I had cancer. And so we did the surgery, and it didn't go well, and so I had to go to the emergency room at Cedars-Sinai. And so we went there, and we had a CNA that acted as my overnight nurse. And so she stayed with me for the whole time that I was there. And so we got talking, and so she said, so you're looking for a wife? And I said, of course. And she said, well, from what you said, you sound like someone that would like to meet my sister. And I said, well, sure, thinking that she's probably down the street or something. And so I asked the CNA nurse, I asked her, so where is she? And this nurse said, well, she's in Philippines. So I was like, what? So, she asked me to contact her and just say hi to her. And so, then I got out the next day from the hospital, and Mom and I, who were at the hospital, we ended up flying back home to Spokane. And I just had it in my mind that if I ever see this lady again, I can tell her that I did what she asked me to do, which would be say hi to her sister. And so I got on the computer and went on and messaged her and just say, "Hi, my name is Peter Mills. I just had a time with your sister in the hospital and talked with her a bit. And I just wanted to say hi." And then she replied to me and said, "Yeah, my sister told me you'd be calling." And so anyway, so we just kind of talked for a little bit, and it was maybe once a week, and then it became, twice a week, and then eventually we started talking every day, and we realized that we really liked each other. And so things progressed from there, and months progressed, and she asked me if I would come to the Philippines. And I said, well, maybe in a year or so I can do that, because I was teaching then and didn't have a lot of time off. And so then she said, this was in November, and she said, would you be able to come over for New Year's? I said, New Year's? That's a little quick. And she goes, yeah, but I would love to have you here, and that would be very fun if we just were able to do that. And so I said, well, I'll try. So got off the phone and looked up the airfare, and we found one flight to go over there for New Year's. It was really expensive. I think it was at the time. I think it was like $4,000 round trip, and and so we were ready to take the trip, and the day came when I was leaving, and I just got so sick and headache, sore throat, all that stuff. And so I tried to pack up and got in the car, and Mom was taking me to the airport, and halfway there I just told her that I can't do this. I am feeling so bad that this is not going to be good, and I'm going to have to call this girl and tell her I can't come. And so we drove back home, and I called her up and told her that I'm not going to be able to make it, and she was so upset, and she was disappointed, and so, but she understood and said, okay, well, we can plan it some other time. But I'd still like to see you, if there's a way you can come over here. So, on the other side, the plane ticket that I had bought, it wasn't refundable, which I thought it was, but it was not. And so I ended up eating the $4,000. But then I got home, and Dad started looking on the internet, and he found another one about a month later, and another plane ticket. And so, and this one was about half the price from what the other one was. And so we got that one, and everyone over here in Spokane was telling me not to go because there are a lot of problems. I have health problems myself, but then there's a volcano over there that was exploding, and so they told me not to go over there. Then my brother told me that there's this new virus going around, which coincidentally was the coronavirus. And so it was a lot of stuff saying, don't go. But I had it in my head that I had to go. I had to go. And so I ended up taking the flight. Things went perfect. Ended up in Manila in the Philippines. And from there, it was a short plane ride to Canlon, which was her city. And things just went great without a hitch. And it was so great to see her and meet her family, meet her friends. And I stayed there for, I think, 3 weeks. And then ended up coming home. And on, I believe it was, I can't remember the exact date, but it was the day before the news of the coronavirus broke out. And so, even though when we were there, we got engaged, we were not able to see each other for another 2.5 years. And so that was a very difficult time for us. But anyway, that was the extent of the Philippines trip.
What were you thinking when you first touched down in the plane in the Philippines?
So I was thinking that I was kind of panicking that I wouldn't recognize her. Even though we had seen each other so much and everything, I still thought, well, here is all these people here that I don't know if I'll be able to tell, which one is her. And so she was actually thinking the same thing. I was thinking, how is she going to know who I am? But when we first got there and we saw each other, we knew exactly who each other was, and we hugged and did all the hey, how are you? It's good to see you stuff, and I ended up losing my baggage and it didn't arrive there, and so I was kind of freaking out a little bit because thinking, what am I going to do? I don't have any clothes or anything, and so we talked with the airport and everything. They assured us that it was coming, that it was in Manila, but it just hadn't arrived yet. And so we were in all these rooms at the airport waiting for the baggage to arrive, which eventually it did. So everything tended to work out. But yeah, and it's a whole new world. Everything is different there. So my first take of the Philippines was just enamored of the whole land over there.
What was the smells like?
It was I would say probably a mix of people smells, good smells, and a lot of food, Asian food.
Okay. All right. So that seems like a pretty common fear that a lot of people wouldn't even consider until they've been in that situation, just going to any foreign country and thinking, okay, how do I know that the person I'm supposed to meet is the person I'm supposed to meet? Like, like whether you're going to, say, Vietnam and you're meeting a fixer, or any country where you have to meet somebody to help navigate you through that country. You're putting a lot of faith and trust.
Yep, there was, and again, that had a lot to do with just my drive of going over there. You know, it took a lot, and it there was a lot of times when I was just telling myself that there's there's not it's not an option to turn around now, and let's just keep moving forward and hope for the best.
Okay. Yeah, and then what happened?
So then, it was about a 3 hour drive from the airport to her house, and so we kind of talked a little bit. I talked with her family a little bit, um, going over to her house, and most of them didn't speak English. Like her mom didn't speak English, but them being a younger generation, they're taught English in schools, so they kind of have a good understanding of the English language. But yeah, so we got along well, and they're all super nice, and and again, it was Anna and I were just kind of on cloud nine because this is the first time we had seen each other face to face, in person, and it was just awesome. The whole time was just awesome.
What was your first thought of the food?
It was different. The food was really good. All of it was really good, but there were some things that I wasn't, prepared for. Which I ate anyway, and it was good. One of the weirdest things was they made a soup made out of baby squid that was cooked in its own ink. And so the soup itself, the liquid, was black because it was the ink. And then there was no vegetables in it, and it was just these baby squids that were boiled, and it all tasted fine, but it was a leap of faith of actually putting it in my mouth, and but anyway, and there was other food there that wasn't familiar, but you just you're in a foreign country, and so you try everything.
Yeah. So what were the driving conditions like?
The driving, so the driving is a lot like the U.S. It follows the same rules and everything that we do, and that's one of the frustrating parts about it because my wife now, she needs to get her driver's license, and even though she had her driver's license in the Philippines, it does not translate to America. So she has to take the driver's test again and do all of that. And it's frustrating because most other Asian countries, as well as European countries, their driver's license just transfer, no questions asked. And and even though the rules and laws are the same over there as they are here, she still has to go through everything again and to get her driver's license.
Yeah, that's frustrating. What about the countryside?
The countryside is beautiful. It is a lot of palm trees and farms. Her family, they are rice farmers, and so a lot of it was farmland that where her house was, And so it's beautiful. I can't say anything more than that. It was gorgeous.
Nice. So what has been the process since you've been there to now?
So Anna and I started with a K1 visa, and that's an immigrant visa, which means we are planning on getting married. And so after the 2.5 years of waiting, we finally got the okay for her to come over here. And and so when she first got here, we got married by the Justice of the Peace right away, in order to fulfill the K1 requirements. And so now we are not on a K1 since we are married, but we're doing what's called an AOS, which is an adjustment of status, which is going to get her her green card, her social security card, her ability to leave the country. And so we're kind of at the end of that right now, hopefully. But so it's a lot better than when she was in the Philippines because now she's here. She will be here. There's no way she can leave. But it's still there are things that need to get done before she's totally set here.
How's that adjustment been?
The adjustment of status has been rough. So we've been at it for about a year now, and it just seems like it's just one thing after another that we have to do, and we have to go places, get documents, sign documents, fill worksheets out, and send them to the government, and it's just an ongoing process that is irritating, and it is just a lot of red tape that we have to get through. And on the other side, it's that is also irritating because there's a lot of people in America that just walk across our borders. And for us to do it legally, it's taken us years to accomplish that.
Yeah, there's money to be made, that's for sure. And and then what other things are you guys planning? What other obstacles do you foresee?
Well, so was a nurse in the Philippines, and again, kind of the same thing as her driver's license. She has to start all over with her nursing degree, and so she has to take the state boards, and so that's kind of where we're at right now. She's doing a lot of studying to take those boards, but then once she's finished, she'll be able to get a job here and work as an RN. But and then there's other things, just as far as establishing a place to stay. Right now, we are staying in my parents' house, which has been great, but we would like to get a home of our own. And then there's a lot of um, a lot of um, being away from home for her. She finds it difficult sometimes to be so far away from her family, and even though her sister and her mom live in California, it's still hard to be away from her brothers and sisters and her nieces and nephews and stuff, and which has been good because she can talk to them, whenever she wants to, but it's still not the same. So that has been a challenge for her, but she's doing great.
So what was the exchange rate for American to whatever peso?
The peso. So the exchange rate, when I was there, it was 50 pesos to $1 American. And to them, a peso is kind of like a dollar. So our money, American money, is worth a lot more than theirs. I think right now it's at like 53 per $1 American. And at some point it was close to 59 per $1 American, but I think it's gone down since.
Dang. Yeah, that's probably something that you semi keep marginally attached in your mind is the exchange rate of currency
Yeah, yeah.
between the peso and yeah. So what sort of advice do you have for people starting out to go down this road you went?
Oh gosh. So I have known people that have got caught up in so many scams of people from other countries trying to lure them there, and they have fallen right for it. So Anna and I, we knew each other very well for a long time before we decided to meet each other. And so by the time we did decide to meet each other, we had known each other very well. And I knew her family before I went over there. I knew exactly what I was doing when I was going to go over there, as far as where I was going to stay, how much money I was going to bring, like Michael said, the exchange rate. I was just very researched. I had done a lot of research on the situation. And then it has to do with how you feel. I mean, it's not always great to just jump into things without ever thinking about it. But, Anna and I had such a great relationship before we met each other that it wasn't really a question for me to go over and meet her. It wasn't that big of a problem. But so I would just tell people to be very cautious in going to another country.
Yeah, I feel like getting scammed would be a big concern for a lot of people. But I'm glad it worked out great, which means that it is real.
It can happen. Dreams can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what have you guys got planned for the horizon now?
So like I said before, we're getting the AOS stuff done right now, and so then she will be able to work, get her Social Security card, green card, and so she is very excited to start working whenever that should happen. I think they told us that the AOL should be somewhere from like 6 months to a year to get it processed and done. Then yeah, it's getting all the stuff done, getting a driver's license. We already have her wardrobe, so she's good that way. Because Spokane's weather is a lot different than the Philippines. But yeah, it just there's a whole lot of stuff to get someone all prepared for when they come to America. But yeah, otherwise we're just hoping we're both going to keep working and hopefully at some point getting a house and just kind of moving forward from there. We're not making too many solid plans at this point because we don't know what the future holds, but we are optimistic.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry about the sound buzzing there for
Oh,
you,
no
Peter.
problem.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, you have your earpieces in there, and those affect the
Hearing aids,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell people about your struggle for survival, your unique story. It's a great story. You need to tell it.
Well, okay. So I guess it started when I was 14 years old, and I was a football player back then. And so I just started noticing that I was having trouble doing the performances as far as doing the drills, doing the plays, etc. Because I couldn't keep my balance as well. And so then I started getting headaches. I had very bad headaches, and I would be taking lots of pain medication, just over the counter stuff. And mom took me to a doctor and said, this is what's going on. What do you guys think? And so the doctor said, well, it's just a virus that's going around. I wouldn't worry about it. And then so we went home, and about a week later, the same symptoms were staying. And so mom said, we need to go to the doctor again and get a checkup. And so we went back, and again, the doctor said, this is just a virus. Don't worry about it. And mom, who is a RN, she graduated a long time ago. But anyway, she knew better, and she said, no, we need to get a CAT scan. And so we got a CAT scan, and the doctor looked at it, and he said, we need to get an MRI on this. And so they sent us to an even bigger clinic, and they did an MRI there. And mom and I waited there for hours, and the clinic had actually closed, and there was no patients in the waiting room at all. And so I think it was around 8 o'clock that the doctors came out, and they had us go into their office, and that's when they told me that you have cancer. And so as a 14-year-old, that's pretty heavy stuff to be told, and especially when you are at the peak of your athleticism, and and it was just very strange time. And so immediately after that, I had emergency surgery, and we started the radiation and chemotherapy right away, and so that was pretty much the onset of it. Then the doctors told us that it's good that you're young, because young people generally tend to move through the treatment very quickly and do very well. At the time, I was fully grown, so there was no problems with my body withstanding the treatment, the trauma of the treatment. And the other thing is that the growth plates, if they're not closed when you have the radiation and chemotherapy, then they stop where they're at. So kids who have cancer, they tend to be really small the rest of their life because their growth it stops at that point. So you have kids that are older, and yet they have bodies of a 10-year-old. So that was in my favor, that I was fully grown, and that I had a strong body. I was an athlete, and so my bones were strong, my organs were strong, and I had muscles. But then it was just a mind screw. It was just leaving the world of academia, being with school, being with your friends, being with your other teammates, etc., and just getting used to having daily appointments at the hospital, getting used to having a lot of injections, having a lot of medication just pumped through you. Now, I had what's called a portacatheter, which they implanted into my shoulder under my pectoral muscle, that had a small tube that went into my heart. So that way they could inject the chemotherapy into my shoulder, and it would go straight to my heart and kind of be diluted by my blood. Whereas previously, before they had the portacatheter, they would put the chemotherapy into the veins, which the medication is so caustic that it wears away the veins very quickly. And so people who had cancer before the portacatheter was invented, their veins are usually gone by the time they are in an older age. And then, so it was 2 years of doing that. And for me, it was not going well. The first few months, I got the treatment, and the doctors were coming into the hospital room telling me that things were not going well, and that the tumor in my head was not getting smaller, and that it was in fact getting larger. And so that was very difficult for me, and it was difficult for my parents and everything. But they were faithful, and one day the doctor came into the room and he said, "I don't know why, but the tumor is shrinking." And so that was just the best news that we could hear at the time. And then a few more months went on, and things kept progressing, positively from then on. So
Well, you said he didn't know why the tumor was shrinking. So is this usually not what's supposed to happen?
So of course this is supposed to be what happens. That's the whole goal of the doctors, is to get rid of the tumor. But they didn't anticipate how it was going to work, and so my family and I, we are a very faithful family. We are Christians, and so there was a lot of prayer going on, and so there are a lot of us that think that there is some divine intervention going on there. But anyway, so it was a strange time, and it was even stranger going back to high school because I didn't think I was going to live through it, and so it was very awkward to leave my freshman year and then come back my senior year, and it was just seeing everyone again. They all knew, they're all glad to see me. Oh, Peter, but it was weird. It was kind of like going from one world to another. It's your life was one way, it totally changes, and now it's another way. And so it was difficult, and it was very hard for my family and I to go through that.
Oh yeah.
But it was just, yeah, moving forward at that point. My whole goal was just moving forward. So I ended up graduating high school, which no one thought I would, and I decided that I wanted to go to college, and so I ended up going to the University of Idaho down in Moscow, Idaho, and I decided to go for an education degree because I felt like that was something that I really had a passion for. And so I went down there, and the first year didn't go so well. I didn't do that great academically. As far as my health goes, it was fine, and everything was going very well. But so my sophomore year is more of I was more on the ball of things, and my brain was more healed, and and I was just very focused on my studies. And so then my junior year, I decided that I wanted a different experience. And so I decided to sign up with the University of Brighton in England. And so I spent my whole junior year in England, and going to school down there. And that was great. I think that was something that I needed to do just to prove to myself that I could. And and it gave me a different perspective of the environment and just how people live in a different country. So I really, really had a great time in England, and I came back to the University of Idaho for my senior year, and just to finish up my education degree, and did some student teaching in, I think it was a preschool classroom, and then I also did a student teaching stint in high school classroom.
So, what was it like moving to England?
So England was an experience. That was one of my first times of leaving the country and experiencing life in a different area of the world. And England, it was still familiar because they still spoke the language. They did things pretty much the same as America. So it wasn't the biggest change, but it was a small change, and I look back on those times very fondly. I loved being in England.
So where were you located in England?
So I was in Brighton, England, which is on the southern coast, about 40 minutes away from London. Uh, and it's kind of a resort town. And so you'd go to the boardwalk, there'd be, carnival games and stuff like that. And um, it is a nice town. It was a smaller town, but I was glad that I was where I was at.
So you were studying teaching then?
So I was pretty much done with my teaching requirements. So when I was there, I studied an English like writing class, a Shakespeare class, a history of Ireland class. That I had to choose an elective, and so I chose photography. Um, yeah, so it, I was pretty much done with my education classes, so I finished those up when I came back to Idaho, and so I never ended up teaching in England.
Mm, yeah. So how is the what do you think about the teaching world now? Would you want to go back into it?
So teaching has changed a lot, and I have been in teaching for 15 years, and I just think that for right now, I'm ready for something else. And uh, I still love teaching. I love working with students, but when you've done it for so long, you need a break and you need something else to do. And so I can't say right now when or if I'm going to return, but we'll see.
What are reasons why you wouldn't want to return to teaching?
Well, these days, parents are very difficult to deal with, and therefore their kids are very difficult to deal with. Um, so during the whole COVID thing, there was a lot of mental health issues that popped up everywhere with kids and with parents. And so, unfortunately, you deal with a lot of students and parents that are not very healthy, and it wears you down a lot. And so, I started education in teaching English. And so I taught English for not that long, 7 years. And, uh, and then through a different situation, they needed me to teach a special ed class. And so I did that, and I ended up loving it. So I went back to school and ended up getting my special ed degree. But that opened up a door to working with a lot of high needs students. But again, high needs students have a lot of psychological disorders. And speaking with the parents, they have similar psychological disorders, which makes it very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good way to place it. The way you artfully said, yeah, having to deal with, yeah, that the students and parents are sick, and that's something that goes back onto you and you have to deal with. But I mean, it's still, I guess that's part of the industry, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. And for those that can handle it, God bless them. But instead of just sacrificing my own sanity and my physical body, I just feel that right now is not the greatest time to be in education.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to either, especially now with everybody being all woke and having to deal with privileged people, and you don't even know because the laws change so quickly. You don't even know where the gray areas are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of education, it has taken power away from the educators and put it in the parents' hand. And so it's kind of like dealing with the inmates running the asylum, and when you're a teacher dealing with that environment, it's very difficult to accomplish the tasks at hand.
Well, now with virtual school, because I was thinking about your story about how you weren't going to school. Nowadays, that would be like nothing because your social life wouldn't have been the physical school. It would have been online. If it was now, if you were to take you put 14-year-old Peter into today's society, how do you think that would be different?
Um, I was more driven when I was that age, as far as I was very focused on my academics as well as athletics. And so I was very disciplined. And so I think I might have had a more difficult time today, just seeing the environment that schools are. Um, I I don't know. I don't know how I would have done. I kind of look back on it and see that having cancer was a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to look at those things as blessings because if not, you wouldn't be who you are. And, you see all these other people who have lives that are incredibly hard and horrible, and you think, therefore the grace of God, go I.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Well, I think about like remote schooling now. So how much different would it be? Because that would have been really difficult for me. Because remote school back then that wasn't a thing, and
Right.
so to catch up with correspondence with just you're sick as shit sitting in bed, your mom shows up or whoever shows up with your homework from school. And I'm sure like your mom, your brother, somebody had to been tasked with getting your homework, bringing it to you. You sit there sick as shit and probably not even caring about what the lesson was. Like, whatever. Why do I care about math when, my bones hurt?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I actually had a liaison come from the school to give me my homework and everything and my schoolwork. And so she would go back and forth between my house and the school and talk with them. But as far as the online school, um, it I don't know if I would have done so good. I really needed that person to person interaction to be able to move forward. And you're right, as far as a lot of the assignments I had, I didn't really care about. It was more of a distraction for me than
Hmm.
to actually concentrate on more of the medical stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that if I was just left to my own devices, I probably wouldn't have done as well
Hmm.
because I wouldn't have managed my time so well, and I would probably procrastinate more. And so that's a good question. I don't know how I would have done if I had the online work. I can say that having a teacher with you or an adult presence there, it kind of keeps you motivated to do school. And so if everything was online, I think it would kind of be hard to stay motivated.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very hard. You're right. And I think about there was no YouTube back then. So you are solely if you were truly driven on passing, figuring out a math problem, you had to rely solely upon the answer in the back of the book and trying to make the equation match the answer in the back of the book.
Yeah, that's true. And there were times when the person that came from the school to my house would do problems for me, actually, because I would fall asleep just due to the exhaustion factor. And I still would learn what I need to learn, but I do have to say that there were times when the liaison could see that I was just not in the right state of mind to be able to do schoolwork.
That's pretty touching. Like, no, that's really human. That's a really human thing. I can imagine being a liaison, sitting down, and then, they passed out. I'm like, all right.
And that brings up an important topic is that I think to have everything 100% online isn't the greatest learning experience, because school in general, you need to have a human interaction. You need to have a person there that is working with the individual student.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good way to put it. And it also makes me think about how in your state at that point, you weren't really thinking of academics. You were probably thinking more like philosophical, theological things that people shouldn't be thinking at the age of 14.
It definitely, you're right in that. You grow up pretty fast. When you're 14, you're still a kid, but placed in a situation like that, you are forced to be an adult, and you tend to look at long-term things instead of short-term, and think of whether you're going to live to be here in the next few years or not.
Yeah, it's like being a prisoner on death row.
Yep, that's that. And if I were to encompass what it was like to change from the academic school world to the cancer world, it's a lot like going to war. You know, you go to war and you're totally changed, and then you come back and you're a different person, but everyone still sees you as the same person you were. But you're not the same person you were. You've changed. You've had experiences that no one else can understand.
Yep, it's a transformational experience. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it still hasn't necessarily have you seen the end of it. You're still dealing with the repercussions of these medical issues.
I am. So I have horrible hearing. I wear hearing aids because to get into it a little bit more, we all have what's called cilia in our ears. There are small hairs, and that's all we hear is vibrations move the hairs, which creates sound. Well, when you have chemotherapy, it wears away those hairs, and so you can't hear as well because you don't have the vibrations. So I've just noticed that as time goes on, my hearing has been getting worse and worse, and that's one of the reasons why I think I need to take a break from school now. And that's the same thing with my eyes. My eyesight's getting worse, and I can't see through half of my right eye, and it doesn't bode well for working in a classroom anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically 50% blind, but that still doesn't hold you back. You're still getting after it in life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's true, but I look at, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, how much worse is things going to get? So I kind of feel like, you know, I might as well find something that's more accommodating to my abilities. And and teaching is a young man's game, and I'm not so young anymore.
Yeah, it does seem like a young man's game. You'd have to have a lot of energy to keep up with that. And I don't blame you. I mean, and that's part of life. You start off in something, and rarely does anybody, continue on in the same career that they first started out in. At this point, it almost seemed interesting, and not a necessarily good way if you continued on in the same career path like your entire life. But but then again, I mean, some people have 2 to 3 different careers, and that seems to be a normal thing. But if it wasn't for these transformational experiences that give you a different outlook on life, and understanding that life is pretty precious and you should not take it for granted, and people need to live life to its fullest extent.
And in a way, you're absolutely right. Now I have a wife. I have people in my life that I need to focus on. That working in schools, especially the hard jobs where you're dealing with the hardest of the hardest kids, it's not so well when you deal with being threatened every day, and it's just it takes a toll on you, and so you tend to look at what is more important, and you look at the things in your life and decide that teaching might not be the best idea right now.
Yeah, I mean, you were at the alternative school where these kids are something else, and they throw stuff, they yell at you, they try to get at you mentally, and that's a rough gig. I mean, bless those that do that. That's some saintly work, but yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Yeah, I'm sure you got some crazy stories to tell without revealing personal information of minors.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, but at least you're moving on to the next thing. That's good. So
Yeah.
what have you guys been watching on Oh yeah. You know what I realized? You guys went to that rodeo, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that rodeo.
So that actually started. My sister-in-law wanted to give my wife a real American experience since she's from the Philippines. And so she and my brother got us tickets to go to a rodeo. And it was a fun time. It wasn't wasn't the greatest experience, but it was fun. I myself had never been to one, and so it was fun to see what it was all about. And Anna, my wife, she loved it and thought it was just kind of one of those quirky things that we both ended up enjoying.
No, you're right. It is a quirky American thing. And it's also a bigger deal down in Brazil. I know Brazil, it's kind of a thing. But yeah, rodeo. Try to hold on to the bull for that 8-second ride, I think is what it was.
Yeah, 8 seconds.
Yeah, down at the Spokane Arena.
Yep.
That reminds me, I got this one guy, Danny Woodbury, the pacemaker influencer, bodybuilder. He is gonna be doing an Empire Classic bodybuilding competition in Spokane Arena there on April, want to say 23rd. Don't quote me on that, people. Empire Classic, be sure to Google that. Danny's going to be there. So the thing about these bodybuilding competitions I've been finding out is, yeah, okay, so some backstory, folks. We have an entire YouTube channel based on Danny and his pacemaker that he's got going on, which made me think about Peter's story about how they put the tube through your
Portacath.
Yeah, the portacath went straight into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So they were giving you chemo directly into your heart.
Yep, that's true. They'd shoot it into the portacath, which would go down a tube that was connected to my heart. And so the chemotherapy would go and get diluted by the blood in your heart and then go to the rest of the parts of your body.
Okay, so that's how it works. So you sit in bed for how many hours a day? How long does a chemo session last?
Few hours.
Yeah, tell us about what you were thinking when you'd go into a chemo session.
Well, going through chemo, it's not a great experience. It hurts, and you would like to tell the nurses that they should be doing this, should be doing that, that you don't like this, you don't like that. But you're getting chemotherapy to save your life. And so it's just best just to keep your mouth shut. And and then especially when you're doing it every day, it becomes so rote that you stop thinking about the stuff that you don't like. You just go into it and have it done.
So how does it make you feel?
So you kind of feel like a caged animal. Just kind of you're doing what you have to do without giving any emotions, and you just go through the time that you're there and try not to screw anything up. Because ultimately you're there to get your life back. And you're not going to get your life back by complaining and telling everyone how bad it is.
Yeah. How many people do you think get... Sorry, folks. How many people do you think get cancer every year?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of people. And the medical advances have increased immensely from when I was going through it. And And actually, if I was going through it today, it would have been a lot easier process because of the advancements that they've made from then to now. And so the other thing is that my chances of survival would have been increased hugely today compared to when I was going through it.
Yeah, do they even do chemo? Or do they do gamma? I don't know what they do.
So yes, they still do chemo, and they do what's called a gamma knife, which means they can pinpoint, like a needle point, where a tumor is in your body and put the radiation on it. So when I was going through it, they just kind of shot your whole body with radiation and hoped for the best.
Mm-hmm.
But now they can see exactly where it is and put the radiation into the tumor.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the result of what you're dealing with now is due to the medical practices of the day, which are kind of like, it's incredible how much these medical advances have gone.
That's definitely true. So you're right as far as a lot of stuff that I deal with. It wouldn't be around these days. And there are things that nobody really understands. So when you're laying in a hospital bed for months, your muscles tend to atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through years of physical therapy after the whole cancer therapy just to build my body back up again. And it was helpful that I was an athlete because I was used to lifting weights and doing physical exercises with my body, which is basically a lot of what physical therapy was.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things probably pulled you through is the dividends that you invested in your body and having a good, strong, solid childhood of sports and not being stagnant.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Being disciplined and with academics as well as athletics, and knowing that the sacrifices that you make now are going to pay off later. And so that had a lot to do with the whole cancer experience.
So, so you had the tumor in your brain, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, where in your brain was it located?
So it was called medulloblastoma. That was a cell type, and it was at the base of my brain, in at the very top of the neck, where kind of your skull meets your neck,
Mm-hmm.
and and mine was, I think, on relatively on the outside of the brain, so they didn't have to go very far to take care of it in surgery. But it's anytime you're dealing with cancer of the brain, it's a very dicey situation.
That's the whole brain.
Yep. So and that's why a lot of people who have brain cancer don't end up surviving, is because it is such a important part of the body.
Yeah, which makes your story particularly unique because you had your. So you said So you mentioned that, first off, for everybody listening, they flushed his body with the archaic way, which they don't do it anymore, of just chemotherapy. Just essentially just run chemo through your system for certain times a day, which kills everything. And then in hopes that it'll just, also kill the tumor too, which it did work.
Yes, it did. Although, yeah, they do that with the chemotherapy as well as the radiation.
Okay, so
And
what's the difference between chemo and radiation? I guess I don't know.
so chemo is a liquid medication, and it can be injected into you. Like I said, with me, I had a portacath in my shoulder that they would inject it into, whereas radiation is a form of light rays, and the light rays, you can't see them, you can't smell them, you can't taste them, anything, and it's just like a giant gun that shoots you.
So did they shoot you with the gamma or with that gun or whatever?
With the radiation machine, yes.
In the back of your head?
Yes, although since my cancer was in the back of my head, they were concerned about the spinal column as far as the cancer cells traveling down the spinal column. So they gave me radiation all the way through my body, pretty much.
Dang. So they started from the top, from the back of your head, and they're like, okay, you have a tumor in the back of your brain, so we're not going to cut it out, but we're just going to zap you with radiation zaps all the way down?
Yep, it's
Okay.
called the blood-brain barrier.
Okay.
And the blood-brain barrier is everything in the skull, and then if anything travels outside of the skull, it would come down the spinal column, and that is called breaking the blood-brain barrier. And so they were afraid, the doctors were afraid that the cancer would have escaped the blood-brain barrier and gone down my spinal column. Now, that was not the case.
That's good.
But there's no way you can tell.
So you had a very good holy of holies, the blood-brain barrier there.
Yep.
And that's what kept you going. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that could have definitely gone wrong.
Yeah.
And
Had a lot to do with the timing of the whole thing, of how quickly the doctors were able to attack the situation. But it also had to do with the age that I was in, that I was at. It had to do with the bone structure, my bone structure. They were strong enough to withstand the treatments. And then it also had to do with the self-discipline and ethics that that I was conditioned by through my history.
yeah, because you could have just gave up on life and been like, I have no ambitions for nothing. You know, you could have done something like that. You know, and so what are you thinking about for shows that you watch? What would you want to see if you were to make a game show? What would be that game show you would want to see?
That's a good question. Probably like a Jeopardy game show. I tend to enjoy little bits of trivia.
That's always fun, the trivia and cerebral thing that gets you thinking And then a cash reward for answering trivial questions right. Yeah. So tell me about other things that you guys got planned as far as what sort of big adventure do you want to start on next?
So right now we don't really have anything planned because, like I said before, we have stuff that we have to get done, and so we're waiting for Anna to start working, and then we really don't make too many plans. We kind of go by the old adage of, if you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans.
That's a good way to do it. Have you been studying any history lately?
I have not. No.
Who is your favorite president?
Favorite president? That is a difficult one. I always liked JFK. I love Ronald Reagan. And then a lot of our founding fathers I thought were interesting characters.
What would you recommend for a book for people to read?
Oh gosh, I haven't read a good book in a while. I would say the Bible. Read your Bible.
Cool. What's your most favorite passage out of the Bible? What is the biggest takeaway of the Bible, you think?
Biggest takeaway from the Bible is that God is faithful and he won't give up on you, and so you should never give up on him.
It's a good way to put it. I definitely like that. And we have hit our 2-hour time limit, people. Thank you. I want to welcome Peter Mills. Peter Mills on the podcast, everybody. Thank you. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Smash the bell for more updates.